Well, the new season 1 of Doctor Who is over, which means it's time to look back, to reflect, and to decide, in time-honoured tradition, which were the best episodes of the season and which were the least best episodes of the season, or worst, if you want to phrase it like that. I'm going to be giving you my rundown from 8th position up to 1st, and I'd like you to do the same. So let me know in the comments below which episode you liked the most, down to which episode you liked the least. Hi, welcome to Culture Filter, I'm the Fill-In Filter, and as I said, we're going to be ranking the episodes from Season 1 of Doctor Who, the new Season 1 of Doctor Who, Series 14 of Doctor Who, whatever you want to call it. Now, whatever you thought of this season, whether you liked it overall or really didn't like much of it at all, there will always be a ranking to the episodes. There will always be some episodes you liked or disliked more or less than others. So, regardless of what your overall thoughts of the season, I would be interested to find out which episodes you thought were the best, or if you really hated the whole season, which was the least worst, I guess is another way of phrasing it. So put your rankings in the comments down below. For my own part, I might do a whole roundup of the season in a separate video, but for the most part, I overall enjoyed the season. However, there were a few low points. I didn't think it started in the strongest way it could have done, and I didn't think it ended particularly strongly either with that last episode, which had some issues, let's just say. Check out my review if you want to know what I thought they were. But, you know, there was a lot in the middle which I did like as well. So it was a bit of a mixed bag of a season for me, and I think the rankings will reflect that. So shall we get straight into it, shall we? At 8th place, I am putting Space Babies. Now look, I appreciate that Doctor Who needs its lighter-hearted moments as well as its more darker moments, and there's a balance to be had here, and I totally get that you can't launch into a brand new series with the really dark and gritty stuff, because you kind of need to ease people into that at least a little bit. So in that respect, I get what they were going for with Space Babies, and there is bits of it that I really like. I kind of like the concept of the talking babies in some parts, and the bogeyman monster was interesting and scary, a brilliant visual design. But there were just moments where this episode tipped into the too silly for me, and I mean that's happened before. That happened with Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, was the other prominent one. I remember it feeling too silly at the time, although on rewatches, that one hasn't been as bad as I remember it. So, while my personal preference is to err into the either dark and gritty or more neutral tone of Doctor Who, I'm not that much of a fan when it gets really silly. And so, especially with that farting spaceship at the end, this has to go on the bottom. At number 7, I've put The Devil's Cord. Now, again, this episode, I think, it's being ranked partly because of my disappointment in what it wasn't. I was one person that was actually fully on board for a full-on musical episode of Doctor Who. I would have loved one with, 5 or 6 full musical numbers. It wrapped into the plot somehow, and they had a villain here that could have done that, and they didn't. And I just felt it was a big missed opportunity. All we got in terms of songs in this were little snippets of songs here and there throughout. Bad songs like the, supposedly bad songs like the dog song and things like that, where you just get little tiny snippets, no full numbers. And then one big full number at the end, which, bearing in mind I am somebody that loves musicals and loves musical episodes of TV shows, usually love the Buffy musical, love the Star Trek musical episode, I love those things. I wanted Doctor Who to be something like that and up with that quality. That song at the end, I didn't like. So I liked Maestro. I thought they were an interesting villain, and I thought they just could have done more with it in terms of the concept. I don't think they were brave enough with the concept, and so it's going quite low down on my ranking because of that. At number 6, Empire of Death. Again, this is not without merits. There is some good stuff in there. There are some particularly good, really good individual scenes in there. The ones that really tap into human emotion and are just about real people dealing with their situations. So you've got the scene in the tent with the kind woman, which was a beautiful scene, amazingly acted, really tugged on my heartstrings. I talk about why, for personal reasons, that scene affects me perhaps more than others in the review. So I'm not going to go into that again, but if you want to see that, go to my review of that episode. That was an amazing scene. And the reunion with Ruby's mum was an amazing scene. However, I can't help but feel disappointed with this episode in how it set us up to think one thing, and not just in a kind of like, you can do red herrings well, but then you can also do them badly. And here, I think they were done badly because Russell lied to us. Like, not just a red herrings that kind of like, don't look over there, look over here instead type red herring, which is fine and that can work. But it was a red herring in the kind of like, they showed us a scene and pretended later that the scene had something in it that it didn't have. When we saw the scene in Church on Ruby Road, I'm talking about the lamppost. And the whole pointing thing, if it's just an ordinary 15-year-old girl, there was a lot. And the more I thought about this, even since doing my review, the more it just doesn't work as a conclusion to Ruby's story, which is a real shame. And a real shame because the first part of the episode I really liked. It's a two-parter, I've decided to split them up. But the first part I really liked. The second part, while there were some good bits about it, and I really liked the design of Sutekh. I've said in my review that there were elements of Sutekh I really liked. But the way they lent on the 70s episode a lot more than I thought they were going to at the conclusion of the previous episode when they revealed him. They lent on that 70s episode a bit too much for a series which is meant to be bringing in new viewers. So it's quite low down on my ranking. That doesn't mean I didn't get some enjoyment out of the episode, because I did, but it has a lot of issues and it probably is one of Russell's weakest, potentially is Russell's weakest finale. Is it the weakest finale of the whole show? I don't know. I'd need to go rewatch a couple from the Chibnall era for that. I'm not a Chibnall era hater by any means. There's some great episodes in the Chibnall era. His finales are not his strong point either. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do a ranking of finales at some point. But this one quite low down. At number 5, I've got Rogue, which is a great episode. I think we're into this is a really enjoyable episode. I don't have much negative to say about it. I enjoyed it a lot. It's a standard Doctor Who episode, and actually that's what this series really needed. It was just a kind of bog standard adventure, discover who the bad guys are, defeat the bad guys, sorted. Rogue and the Doctor had great chemistry. I loved seeing them interact. It was really good, but there wasn't anything that, like, while they had great chemistry, there was nothing in this episode that made me go, wow, I really need to put this up high. And I know this is some people's favourite episode of the season, and that is fine. If this is just a sort of, for me, this is just a sort of bog standard, in a good way, Doctor Who episode, but nothing that's like, oh my god, that's amazing in it. I think by this point, the Doctor crying every episode had lessened the impact when he did cry in this episode, to the point where I'm like, okay, he's crying again. He doesn't affect me as much as the same scene might have done if he had only cried once or twice before then. That's an issue that I think is in the show, where because he cries every episode, it just lessens the impact when he does. And in fact, even by the time of the finale, him crying didn't have any impact on me at all. When I felt more emotional in the finale, it was other people and the other characters that were provoking that, and not him anymore. Whereas earlier on in the season, it was him, but he did it so much that I'm now less. Anyway, it was still a good episode. I don't think it's a bad episode by any means. Kind of middle of the road for the season for me. At number 4, I've put Dot and Bubble, which I thought was a really interesting way of exploring the topic of racism, and the twists that came towards the end of that were really interesting, and looking back and doing a rewatch on it, it's interesting to spot those little microaggressions peppered in through. I thought it was really well written. I thought it was really well acted by the people that were focused on particularly by the actor playing Lindy. She did a fantastic job of portraying this ultimately very vile person. And that moment where she turns on the person that she idolizes, the person that she's got a crush on, and she just turns on him to save herself. That was, especially the first time I watched it, a really powerful moment. And then that scene at the end, and the way the Doctor's still begging to save them. And people have their issues with that scene, and I can understand some of them, but in the moment it was still really powerful, and I thought a really strong episode. It was a Dr. Light episode, but in a way they were scattered throughout a bit. Like, it's not a Dr. Light episode like 73 Yards is, but it was still a slightly Dr. Light episode. He wasn't the focus through most of the episode, and it worked really well. The character, the monster design was really well. I thought the world was established really well. Really powerful episode. At number 3, I put The Legend of Ruby Song, the first part of the finale. While it did feel like it was just a lot of setup, I thought it was quite good setup. And if I was putting these two together and ranking them as one, it would probably elevate the other half a little bit, but the other half would drop this one a lot more, if that makes sense. I thought what they were doing was really interesting, and the reveal of Sutekh was really chilling. I thought I got goosebumps, and I know people have criticised the way Sutekh returned as being whether or not it's accessible for new viewers. I think in this episode, it's fine. I don't think there's too much of an issue. You might have changed maybe one or two things about how the name particularly was revealed, but for the most part, you'd reveal a new god of death in very similar ways, I think. So I don't have much issue there, and the way it was shot, the way it was presented to us was very chilling, and I was on the edge of my seat with goosebumps. It was really good. So even though the second half of this story let it down, this part of the story, which I am ranking separately, I liked a lot. At number 2, I've put 73 Yards, another Dr. Light episode, but a very chilling episode. Again, this is one that divides people quite a lot. You might have put it like a lot lower if you are someone that really didn't like the fact that a lot was left up in the air at the end, that there was this mystery, these questions that weren't answered. But I quite like that. I'm a big fan of filmmakers like David Lynch, and he did like nothing is ever answered in David Lynch films, and I kind of like that. I like being left to kind of do my own theorizing and my own, like, oh, I wonder if it was that, I wonder if it was this, and I may never get those answers, and that is fine for a story like this. I think it works really well for the kind of atmosphere that they're trying to create, and Millie Gibson shone in this episode. She was absolutely fantastic, and this was the first thing she recorded, and yet she probably did her best work of the season in this episode. She did a whole range, like really showed off her range as an actor in this episode, and did a really good job. And like I say, I didn't mind all the up in the air slightly, oh, did it mean this, did it mean that, we don't know, questions that we were left with. I quite liked that in this episode. So that's why this comes quite high up, but not as high up as my number 1 place, Boom. Stephen Moffat's done it again. He has written the best script in a Russell T Davies show-run season. That seems to be his MO. Most Russell seasons, the best episode is a Stephen Moffat one. And as has happened here, it's such a unique kind of like the sort of bottle episode of we are stuck in one location because the Doctor has stepped on a landmine, and seeing the Doctor out of his comfort zone a bit is always interesting. Ncuti does a fantastic job in portraying a whole range of emotions in this. Same with Millie, she does a fantastic job here too. We get some delving into a bit more of the mystery of Susan Twist, which yes, might disappoint some people later on with its eventual reveal, but here I think it worked really well with her as the ambulance. Some lovely heartwarming stuff between the dad and the daughter, or the hologram of the dad and the daughter, that worked really well. And yeah, I had a really good time watching this, and I was on the edge of my seat for most of this episode. So that is why it gets my number 1 spot. So there we go. Here's my ranking of season 1 on the screen for you now. Top episode, boom. Least liked, Space Babies. Where do these episodes fit on your own ranking? Put your rankings 1 to 8 or 8 to 1, whichever way around you want to do it, in the comments down below, and we can compare. And it doesn't matter, my least favourite might be your favourite. That's absolutely fine. We can all have different opinions and still all be pleasant to one another. So thank you for watching. I'll be back for more Doctor Who videos soon. I'm probably going to do some more rankings related to this season as well. I'm thinking I think we should rank the Doctor's costumes, considering he had so many, so I might do that next. But if there's anything else from the season you'd like me to rank, also let me know that in the comments below. See you soon. Don't forget to check out another one of my videos, like the one that'll appear on screen any second now, which you can click. Goodbye.